And so we're just grateful that you're willing to be able to join our Lyceum here today. Food and nutrition are at the core of many public health concerns, whether it's addressing chronic disease, food insecurity through the accessibility and the affordability of food, or addressing climate change. And so we're excited to share with you this topic, food as medicine, through a public health lens, and by sharing our expertise, our areas of expertise and experiences. I'll go ahead and hand it on over to Dr. Shanta Dubé, the director of the MPH program.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Lyceum, and thank you for joining us. Before we kick it off, we wanted to present this quote to you. Let thy food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. This quote was by Hippocrates. He was an ancient Greek physician back from 400 BC, and he is actually known as the father of modern medicine. He wrote many, many textbooks on medicine, and one of the key things that he did is he described in a scientific manner the way diseases manifests and their potential treatments. And so to have this quote for him, I think really speaks to why food is so important and critical to our health and well-being.
You have with you today the faculty of the Department of Public Health here at Wingate University, and we each will be sharing with you information about various topics that relate to food as medicine, and also our experiences in areas of expertise. We are committed to teaching students about public health concepts that affect communities through our coursework. And so we're very grateful to have this opportunity to share, some of this information with you here today. Here at Wingate University, we have 2 degrees that we offer, a Bachelor's of Science in Public Health, and then a graduate Master's of Public Health that is online. And we'll talk a little bit more about our programs at the end of this presentation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. O. Dr. Olinda Malaaki, so my students call me Dr. O. I'm an assistant professor of public health and a global health specialist with over a decade of experience in public health practice and research. And I work here at Wingate at the Department of Public Health. Today, we're going to be looking at food as a cultural identity. And here, I already have it here that, food is something that shapes us. Food is something that shapes our identities, our culture, and in the end, our society. And as we all know, or as we may know, that people's attitude towards food and what they eat, or I would say, for example, the values are actually very closely related to culture. So when we think about food, we can think about it from a different perspective, but most importantly, as a tool for good health. I like to think about, my culture. I'm from Nigeria originally, and when it comes to feeding pregnant women, what they eat, it's important that, the way our culture is that you breastfeed your child for almost a year or 2 years. I know that the World Health Organization has 6 months as max, like, you can breastfeed your child up to 6 months, but in certain cultures, like my culture, women are expected to breastfeed their children for more than a year because they believe that good, feeding their child for that long can give them good immunity and make the child strong. And so, again, that's a very huge cultural belief, and that's also a cultural practice in the country where I'm from. And so when you think about that as, things like breastfeeding, for food for infants, we see how that is also tied to cultural values and cultural beliefs. Also, culture is an important determinant of people's perception of illness. And as we, in public health, I always tell my students that we have what we call traditional medicine. And, as important as that is, we know that Chinese and Indian culture have well-defined indigenous system of medicine. They have beliefs in traditional medicine. So when we think about the link of food, culture, and health, we need to consider different cultural perspectives, different cultural practices, because they vary in terms of the way we perceive our bodies, the way we perceive our views about illnesses, what causes illnesses, and what must be done to achieve good health. Again, I'd like to bring you back home. In my culture as a Nigerian, when people are ill, they try to care for themselves first. So when there's some sort of illness or sickness, they try to use home remedies, home cooked foods, for instance, some vegetables, ginger, garlic. And I remember when COVID hit and we didn't have a cure for COVID, people started using, food as a way to cure, some of the symptoms of COVID. They would boil lemon, ginger, garlic, and all the things that were used as home remedies instead of seeking help with Western doctors. That was the first action that a lot of people took when we couldn't find cure for COVID, using food to treat some of the symptoms of COVID. So, in summary, when we look at food, like I said, is a tool for good health. And there are many, many forms of cultural practices that are conducive to our health. Not saying that all cultural practices are good for health, but many cultural practices, many of our food that we eat that have the cultural base to it, or say that is based off of our culture, are very good for our health. And I think that it's something worth talking about. And I'd like to pass it on to my next colleague, Dr.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Knope. I am an assistant professor in the departments of sociology, and I have a joint appointment with the public health department. So I teach several classes in the BSPH program. And today I'm going to talk to you about food deserts a little bit. So food deserts, the term refers to a region lacking access to healthy, affordable food. So in these geographic areas, residents typically have few, if any, convenient options for securing healthy, affordable foods, especially fresh fruits and vegetables. So not surprisingly, food deserts are disproportionately found in high poverty areas, high poverty census tracts. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture currently estimates that more than 23 million Americans actually live in food deserts. And this includes about 20% of rural residents. So this is a big problem both in high density, population density, inner city areas, as well as in many rural communities throughout the United States. So generally speaking, food deserts have become more common in areas with smaller populations, like I just mentioned, in rural areas, also are common in areas with higher rates of abandoned or vacant homes, and in areas where residents have lower levels of education, lower incomes, and higher rates of unemployment on average. So one way the U.S. Department of Agriculture identifies food deserts is by searching for low income and low access census tracts. So in low access census tracts, basically this means a significant share, 33% or more of the population in that area must travel what they define as an inconvenient distance to reach the nearest supermarket or grocery store. So this is defined as at least traveling at least 1 mile in urban areas or at least 10 miles in rural areas to the nearest grocery store. So in low-income census tracts, that is typically defined as an area that has a poverty rate of at least 20%. So researchers are considering a variety of factors when identifying and looking at food deserts. These two sort of low income and low access variables are certainly important, but in general, we're also thinking about access to food as measured by, once again, distance to a grocery store or number of stores in an area. We're also looking at household resources, thinking about what family income variables look like, and things like availability of a vehicle, whether or not people have access to transportation to travel to a grocery store or area with fresh food available. We're also thinking about neighborhood resources, what kinds of resources exist in the neighborhood itself, such as thinking about the average income of the neighborhood. The availability of public transportation as well is a big variable in sort of assessing the availability of food in that area for residents. So residents living in food deserts also generally have a hard time finding foods that are culturally relevant and that meet their dietary restrictions. So this speaks a little bit to what Dr. O was mentioning, thinking about the culturally relevant component. That is also a significant challenge for residents in areas that have been identified as food deserts. So food deserts may be underreported from what we can tell because the North American industry classification system basically places small corner grocery stores, what we think of as convenience stores, a lot of places that primarily sell packaged foods. These are often placed in the same categories as kind of larger chain-based grocery stores. So it sort of depends on where you live, but in many places, like I said, these smaller convenience stores technically might count as a grocery store, even as they often don't have a lot of fresh food available to them, or in them, I should say. So making healthy and affordable food available is crucial, we know, to improving the health of residents and of local economies. So fresh fruits are generally more expensive and vegetables more expensive than processed foods. We know this, and this is particularly the case in food deserts. So for instance, while the overall average price of fruits and vegetables has gone up pretty significantly in the United States in recent decades, the price of processed and fatty foods has actually dropped in the same time period. So with inflation, we have even more of a strain on family budgets for food. And we know that the higher cost of especially healthy food often puts families at a place where they don't have the monetary, means to purchase these fresh foods. So environmental policy and individual factors, they all play a role in our eating habits and our eating patterns, as we will be continuing to talk about today, both personally and collectively. And so within this complex landscape, some strategies for alleviating food deserts include some things like incentivizing grocery stores and supermarkets in underserved areas for them to relocate or open up or expand in those areas, funding citywide programs to encourage healthier eating, extending support for small corner type stores and neighborhood-based farmers markets, partnering with communities within food desert regions, basically to implement different policy solutions and interventions at the community level. And then expanding pilot programs, allowing customers to use SNAP benefits, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits, to purchase groceries online. So these are some of the solutions that have been implemented and discussed. And we know that this problem calls for larger systemic and community-based solutions. So with that, I will pass it along to my colleague. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Dr. Knope. As I mentioned, my name is Susie Wolf. I'm the program director of the Department of Public Health. My background is actually as a physician assistant in clinical practice. I'm a contributing faculty member in the PA program here at Wingate University as well. And I transitioned into public health because of my passions in healthcare policy and also addressing food insecurity in my local communities. And so we'll talk about, some solutions, just as Dr. Knope mentioned, to addressing accessibility and affordability related to food. We know that, having access to nutritious food can determine a lifetime of health outcomes. And this is especially true for children. Children need a balanced diet to grow into healthy adults. And long-term food insecurity can actually lead to serious illnesses such as type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and mental health issues. Not to mention, many American families may be experiencing some financial implications associated with balancing the cost of groceries, versus paying for things like access to healthcare. So this is a very, important thing for us to be thinking about here in the United States. Most available foods in communities lacking resources are actually ultra-processed products that are correlated with multiple health conditions, as Dr. Knope did mention. And so we really need to think about ways that we can promote access to fresh whole fruits and vegetables in communities. Farm-to-table practices are near and dear to my heart. As for my family, owned and operated a local farmers market in Central Florida for generations. I can remember helping my grandmother at the cash register and interacting with patrons and really having an appreciation for whole foods and what that meant for our community. The market pictured here was an iconic landmark in the area and was inherently promoting farm-to-table practices through our business. And so when we think about addressing this at the communal level, we also want to be mindful of federal efforts. There are federal programming opportunities such as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, and the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, WIC, as well as free school meals that do provide access to food for many families. But also there are some families that may be ineligible because of income level, immigration status, or other factors where there's still a gap that we need to be mindful of as it relates to increasing accessibility to high quality foods. Research has shown that children who participate in federal programs such as SNAP and WIC actually have higher levels of food security into adulthood, decreasing the likelihood of possibly those associated chronic diseases. And so when we make farm to table practices, essentially what we're doing is we're embracing more of an eco-friendly, healthier, simpler type of lifestyle. And it is associated with higher levels of vitamins and minerals, especially right before the produce is harvested. And trying to integrate these changes into your personal life can really, enhance your overall nutritional well-being. And so just being mindful of trying to supplement some of this fresh whole foods and for possibly processed foods can make a difference over a long period of time, decreasing the risk for chronic diseases. And then of course, it's a sustainable option that can, have positive impacts on our communities. I'm going to go ahead and hand it on over to Dr. Olabisi Badmus to speak to you all about lifestyle medicine.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. As Dr. Wolf mentioned, I am Olabisi Badmus, and I am a physician by training and serve in the role as the Director of Medical and Community Partnerships for the Department of Public Health and the Department of PA Studies. My specialty and background is in preventive medicine and public health, as well as occupational medicine. And I contribute to the program with courses, as well as practice clinically and providing patients different counseling on clinical prevention and nutrition and lifestyle medicine as well. And so bringing that to our topic today. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk about lifestyle medicine. And I want you all to sort of look at this picture and imagine that you have a faucet that's running, and this faucet is overrunning with water, with the water spilling onto the floor. Now the floor is flooding with water, and you're able to keep the floor dry with a mop. You have lots and lots of endless supply of very absorbent mops. And so you're able to sort of keep this floor dry by mopping it up. I would love for you guys to just, if you can type in the chat box, if there are any thoughts on a more effective way of trying to keep the floor dry outside of just mopping. Either in the chat box or even unmuting yourself if you rather. Any thoughts on how we can keep the floor dry besides just having lots of absorbent mops? All right, we have some creative suggestions. All right, I see turning off the faucet, clogging the faucet. Yeah, paper towels. Well, turning off the sink. Yeah, quite a few of you are saying to turn off the sink. And that's exactly what, one of the more efficient ways of trying to keep the floor dry is turning off the faucet. And so I like to start off with this analogy because it describes the comparison of the principles and approach to medicine from the traditional westernized medicine compared to lifestyle medicine. Now you can think of the overflowing of water as symptoms, and what we see in Western medicine is the practice of using medication to control symptoms. So that's comparable to using the mop. For example, for high blood pressure, we control the blood pressure with medications, whereas with lifestyle medicine, we're turning off the faucet because we're focusing on the root cause in trying to prevent disease. So next slide, please. So lifestyle medicine uses the therapeutic and lifestyle interventions to prevent, treat, and manage chronic disease, typically caused by lifestyle habits such as poor diets. And this means that with food and nutrition, this is one of the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. Lifestyle medicine advocates for a whole food, plant predominant diet. And so this means that the majority of the recommended foods and nutrition should come from whole vegetables, fruits, beans, lentils, whole grains, nuts, and seeds. Next slide, please. Now, the 2 categories of food that make up more than 80% of the American diet, according to the USDA, are processed foods with added fats and sugars and salt. And the second largest category are your meats and animal-based products, such as eggs and dairy products. And so the goal is to try and minimize the intake of these type of foods in order to increase the amount of whole plant-based foods that you're able to take in. Now, with society and a lot of the American eating culture has led to the packaging of whole foods. And this is where elements are extracted or processed. And so to give you some examples would include drinking vegetable or fruit juice as opposed to just eating the actual vegetable or fruit, the use of protein powder rather than consuming whole beans and other plant-based proteins, or taking vitamin C supplement as opposed to actually eating an orange, or other fruit sources or vegetable sources of vitamin C. So you will always sort of derive more benefit from eating all of the parts of the food instead of the individual or isolated components of different foods. And so next slide, please. And so there are a number of benefits that come from having a healthy diet. And so feeling more energized and alert is one of the benefits of whole plant-based foods. When you eat whole foods, which are sources of fiber, carbohydrates, and protein, it sustains your energy more naturally. When you consume foods that are high in fiber, it causes the blood sugar levels to increase and then decline slowly and steadily. And so you don't get the sugar rush and then crash that you will see when you're eating processed foods, simple sugars, and white flour. And what you notice is after that spike and crash, you then have cravings for more sugar and more processed foods. And then you also have associated fatigue following that crash. These foods can also prevent obesity and help with healthy weight maintenance. So weight loss commonly coincides with having diets that are heavy in whole plant-based foods because they're full of fiber and they have high water content. And this promotes a sense of fullness. Now, with whole plant-based foods, they're loaded with healthy fats, essential vitamins, and minerals that are needed for your necessary bodily functions. And they also can prevent chronic conditions such as hypertension and heart disease. There's something that is unique to plant-based foods, such as your antioxidants and a plant compound called phytochemicals. And the phytochemicals and antioxidants, these elements help to reduce inflammation and cancer risk due to their ability to protect cells from damage and also repair damage to cells that could lead to cancer. Next slide, please. So not only is there evidence about the prevention of disease with these type of foods, but there's also studies that have shown that there can be reversal of chronic conditions. So in studies, they've seen the reversal of atherosclerotic plaques, which are responsible for heart disease and heart attacks. They've also seen the reversal of diabetes. And in some of these studies where if there wasn't a complete reversal, you did see a reduction in the amount of medication that's needed to control these conditions, to control the diabetes. You also have seen improvement in joint pain in patients with arthritis. And there are studies that also show that there's cognitive benefit and reduction in the risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. And there's also evidence of having improved cancer survival and remission rates for certain types of cancer. Next slide, please. So there are some helpful tips that can help to increase the consumption of whole plant-based foods. One of those things is substituting refined and processed foods in such as white rice or white bread, and switching those things out for whole grains, whole grain bread, rice, as brown rice, as well as brown pastas. You also, if you're having a craving for something sweet, instead of reaching for something like, candy or junk food or any type of sugary snack, use cut up fruit as an alternative, or, other easily snackable types of fruits and nuts, such as trail mix and berries and things of that nature. And then also try to eat the rainbow. And I'm not talking about Skittles, I'm talking about actual natural color, right, of whole foods that represent different color pigments. So the more colorful your plate, the more likely you are to include a broader scope of necessary nutrients. And so, I'll close with encouraging everyone to stay healthy by embracing the lifestyle medicine mantra inspired by the 6 pillars. Eat more plants, keep moving, sleep well, be present, stay calm, and love people. And I'll pass it along to my colleague, Dr. Dubé.
Thank you so much, Dr. Badmus, and all the other panelists. These have been fantastic presentations. Now we're going to shift gears just a little bit, and I'm going to take you all on a journey, maybe 5,000 years ago, if you will, to India, where we're going to talk about system science. Before I begin, I gave you the quote by Hippocrates, but even before Hippocrates, we in India had the Vedas, which are very ancient knowledge scripts in terms of how to live, how to eat, how to be with one another. So this quote, all beings that rest on the earth are born verily from food. Besides, they live on food, and at the end, they get merged with food. Food was verily born before all creatures. Therefore, it is called the medicine for all. So I think you're getting the gist of our presentation today, that everything we consume, everything in every manner that we interact with food is very critical for our health and well-being. Next slide, please. So I'm going to introduce you to this 5,000-year-old medical system that's still alive today in India. Prior to my coming to Wingate, I actually led a study abroad in India where I took students to learn about Ayurveda and to really understand India as a medically pluralistic society. And what they got exposed to, which you'll get exposed to today, is really understanding Ayurveda as a system science. So I don't want to call our bodies cars, but in a sense, if you think about our body, our mind, and our spirit, it is a full system. And that is how Ayurveda approaches it. Ayurveda is Sanskrit. It's Ayur, life, Veda is knowledge. So it's the knowledge and science of life. It provides, if you will, knowledge about what are the healthful foods we need to consume, what works with our systems, what doesn't work with our systems, and I'm going to share a personal story about that. It also dictates how the inputs into our system dictate how we grow, develop, and function. So again, I don't want to call us cars, but just think, what would happen if we put leaded gasoline in an unleaded fuel tank for a car? That car would not function. Similarly, Ayurveda identifies what foods support our systems and what foods do not support our systems. One thing that is very consistent across all of our presentations today that actually has its principles in Ayurveda is that we really need to focus on whole, nutritious foods and plant-based foods. Additionally, in Ayurveda, a key component is not just the plants that we eat or the whole foods that we eat or the vegetables and the fruits, but we have a very specific set of spices and herbs indigenous in India that are very much part of our foods and our cooking, which actually have been studied here in the US. NIH has done several studies, for example, on turmeric, which is a root, and found that it actually has anti-inflammatory and some anti-carcinogenic properties. Next slide, please. So this is just a slide of some of the various spices. And I always, my daughter who now lives in New York, I sent her a spice, a little container with all the key ingredients. And I reminded her that spices are our pharmacy. We use the spices to really help cure some of the ailments. I think Dr. O spoke to that as well in her presentation in terms of some of the foods and spices consumed in Nigeria. I want to preface this by saying this doesn't mean these are actual medicines. If you're having a major ailment, you shouldn't see a doctor. But these are some of the spices we use in our food. So for example, ginger is often used for GI or stomach problems, or sometimes if you're nauseous, ginger helps alleviate the nauseousness. You can now see in stores, they sell ginger tabs. Turmeric, as I mentioned, this is, where is it? This is turmeric. It's very yellow. It's a root. It looks a lot like ginger, and it has anti-inflammatory and anti-carcinogenic properties. Cardamom, we use that actually as a mouth freshener, and you can see that, I don't know if it's on, yeah, right here in this picture right here, it's in a pod. Tulsi, which is also known as holy basil, is an adaptogen, as is ashwagandha, which is a root. It's also an adaptogen. And I don't know if you've heard about those, an adaptogen, but they are becoming more and more prevalent in the US. These are specific herbs and roots that have been shown to help in reducing stress and the stress response, the physiological stress response in the body. But these have been around for millennia in India and have been used countless times around, several different types of ailments, but now in the US and in the West are being recognized as adaptogens, if you will. I want to show you the Tulsi plant. This is the holy Tulsi basil. Next slide, please. So Ayurveda doesn't just dictate what we eat, but how we eat. And when I say dictate, it doesn't mean that it's like strict. It's actually a way of life, right? It's how we eat. And some of that, thinking about our system. So when you put gasoline in a car, you don't put it in the engine, you put it in the gas tank, right? So similarly, how we eat our food is very important to both the digestion, and I'm going to explain that in a few minutes. We want to concentrate on moderation in all we do and eat. So today we've talked about what are the nutritious foods. Does that mean we don't eat an occasional potato chip or have an occasional soda? No. What it's about is moderation. It's about moderating how much of the not so nutritious stuff we put into our bodies. I want to talk a little bit about stress eating, and we're going to do a mindful activity after this slide, actually. Stress eating is prevalent in our society because we're constantly on go, go, go. And one of the key things about how we eat in terms of our sitting posture and our attentiveness to the food actually is directly related to the physiology of digestion. Digestion begins in the mouth with the saliva. And when we are in high stress, our body produces less saliva. So when we have less saliva in our mouth, that digestion that has to start in our mouth doesn't really actually process it effectively and efficiently. So thinking about stress eating is really critical as well. Posture, having a straight posture. And actually in India and in Ayurveda medicine, people sit on the floor cross-legged. The reason is because digestion is much more effective than sitting in a chair with your legs on the ground. Chewing is very essential, not just bringing the food in and swallowing it, but making sure we chew alongside with the generation of the saliva. And a lot of that has to do with how mindful we are when we are eating. And just a little tidbit, you might maybe at some point have seen some folks from Asia eating with hands. We do that traditionally in India, and by the Ayurvedic tradition, the principle is the reason we eat with our hands is not because we don't have utensils. There's actually, it's very sensory focused. Picking our food up with our hands, seeing it with our hands, feeling it with our hands, and bringing it to our mouth actually aids in digestion and brings a connection between the food to our bodies. Next slide, please. So now I want to take you through a mindful activity. It's going to be a little challenging because we are on a webinar. Had we been in person, we would have actually done it a little differently, but just let's all work together on this mindful activity. I'm going to do what we call a guided imagery because I don't have the food items to actually pass out. I am going to show them on the video, and I'm going to walk you through this activity. So since we are on Zoom, I'm going to show you the items. This is actually a very dark purple red grape. They are seedless. It just came out of the refrigerator, so it is cold. And then this is a lime flavored corn chip. Okay, so you have a corn chip and a grape. And I want you to take a moment to just look at these items. And then when you're ready, I'd like you to choose one of them that you would like to eat. So if we were in person, I would be distributing this. So let's use our guided imagery. So I'd like you to select one of these items that you'd like to eat. Now, imagine holding the item in your hand and thinking about the item that you just chose. I would like you to imagine you're holding it. So I'll put it up on the screen again. And I want you to focus on the item and look at its shape and its texture and its color. So just focus on that for a few minutes. And then I would like you to imagine the item you've selected and what it might smell like. What would that grape smell like? Or what would that corn chip smell like? And now I'd like you to take the item you selected and imagine you're putting that item in your mouth. Don't bite it, don't chew it. Just allow the item to be in your mouth. And I want you to imagine, what is the texture of the item you selected? What are the initial flavors you might taste? But just take a moment to imagine that item in your mouth. Now I'm going to invite you to chew that item and imagine the taste and the texture and the sound. What's the sound it's making as you chew it? Is it loud or crunchy? Or is it soft and mushy and quiet to chew? And now I want you to imagine chewing the item 20 times. So count how many times you're chewing. Chewing that 20 times. And then allow the item, after you've chewed it, to go down your esophagus and swallow it. Then I want you to imagine, how does it feel to swallow the grape if you selected the grape? Or how does it feel to swallow the chip after chewing it? So I know this was kind of a tricky activity, not actually having the items and having to do a guided imagery. But really the whole point is really, even though you didn't get a chance to eat the item, how was this approach different than how you usually eat. I can speak for myself that, yeah, life is busy. Sometimes we have to eat on the run. Sometimes I don't even know that I'm eating. How is that possible? But really, it's important, just as important as selecting the correct foods, actually how we eat it and how we connect with the food as it enters our body is very, very important to our digestive system. And as I mentioned, digestion begins through our sensory organs. So think about it. When you smell something baking, doesn't your mouth start to water? That's your salivary gland saying, hey, I'm ready. Bring it on. I'm ready to help you start digesting your food. Similarly, like I mentioned, when we're highly stressed, it reduces our salivary output and actually makes it a lot more difficult for our digestive system in the long run, because our digestive system's having to do a lot more, and sometimes it can't do it all without the beginning step. So I just wanted to bring ourselves to this awareness through this mindful activity to really think about how we currently, our relationship with food and how we currently eat. Are you rushing? Can you find time just to be present with your meal and take that time and allow your body to really savor it? So next time you rush to eat, just try to be mindful of your choices. And when you eat, be mindful of the food item and all it's bringing to your body. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that activity, Dr. Dubé, and walking us through that. Well, at this point in time, we'd like to open it up for any questions that y'all might have for any of the different areas of food as medicine that our faculty shared with you. Feel free to unmute yourself or put a question in the chat box at this time. Any questions at all? How about a thumbs up in the chat box if you're going to try to be a little bit more mindful with your eating after today's Lyceum? All right, I like that. I love to see that. Well, before we go ahead and part today, we would like to share a little bit more information about our programs that we offer here at Wingate University within our department. As I mentioned, we have 2 degrees, the undergraduate Bachelor's of Science in Public Health and the online Graduate Master of Public Health degree. Both degrees are in a concentration area of health education and promotion. We feel strongly that this concentration area helps students engage with the other health science programs here at Wingate University and leverages the work that Wingate University does in our surrounding community. We also have a 4+1 where our undergraduate students, if they meet eligibility criteria, are able to apply to the MPH program early and complete both degrees in 5 years compared to the traditional 6. And we have also launched a PharmD MPH for our pharmacy students that are interested in a dual degree with an MPH. We encourage you to check out our websites to find out more information about the plans of study, the type of coursework that's involved in both degrees. The application for the MPH program is open through the end of July for the fall 23 start, which would be August start for the next cohort of MPH students. And that's a great program that's online, very flexible coursework, primarily asynchronous. And we also have full-time and part-time plans of study for the MPH. Do any of our other faculty members want to add anything before we finish today? Well, again, we hope you'll check out our programs here that we offer. Please don't be afraid to reach out if you have any questions about our programs or what we covered here in this Lyceum. And we're so appreciative of your time today.